Let's have a look at this tweet from the left-leaning think tank, the IPPR, the Institute for Public Policy Research. It says if the north of England were a country, it would be second only to Greece for the lowest levels of investment in the OECD, red exclamation mark. Then, according to their report, the north of England receives one of the lowest levels of investment among advanced economies. Joining us from Newcastle is the Labour Mayor of the North of Tyne, Jamie Driscoll. Does this report surprise you, Jamie?
It doesn't, I'm afraid, Jo. It is that report covers both private sector and public sector investment, and the two are intimately linked. So the combined authority I've been running for the past 3.5 years, every pound we invest, we lever in huge multipliers in terms of private investment, and every pound we invest returns more than £3 per Treasury in payroll taxes alone. But the issue is, it's just not enough. I have a core budget of £20 million a year, which is a drop in the ocean. So, yes, we know how to do this as regional mayors. We're very good at it, cross-party. But it's the scale of it. So that idea that we have levelled up, well, you know, the Levelling Up Fund was £32 per person in the north. Council cuts have been £413 per person. This is not about a Northern Winchfest or anything like that. It is the case. It's economic common sense.
Okay.
All of the country generating wealth and not just channeling everything, because the Green Book values show that it's higher land values. And closing a lot of these long-term inequalities in terms of health, in terms of educational attainment, and particularly transport infrastructure in the northeast.
All right, Anthony.
It's in Russia. Sorry, in London.
Well, I mean, the IPPR is a left-leaning think tank. It's unlikely to say
You've just
something.
Heard Jamie. But you've just heard what Jamie said about the economic reality.
The government's absolutely committed to levelling up. It's announced various funds. I mean, there was a £4 billion total levelling up fund, which did go per capita far more in the north than the south. There's big projects like the Eden project of the north that's opening up in Morecambe. I think it is £50 million there. HS2 still absolutely committed to that. And it's interesting, the data, I didn't realise it from the headline, is both private sector investment and public sector investment, because one of the keys here will be clearly driving up private sector investment and making it more attractive. And you look at things like the free ports, for example, and there's a lot of big economic zones in like Teesside and so on that actually will help, or it's designed to help inward investment from the private sector.
Jamie?
Yeah, but HS2 isn't coming to the north, and it was never coming to Newcastle. The Northern Powerhouse Rail, which was in the Conservative manifesto in 2019, has been ditched. We're very good. I'm working with pension companies to lever in investment. We work with our small businesses. We were the #1 region for inward investment last year in England. We are very good at it, but we don't have the financial firepower. And at the current rate, these little scattergun projects of the Eden project here, opening a leisure centre there, that is so stop-start that it doesn't work. Because when I'm talking to private sector investors wanting to bring in large amounts of money, what they need is certainty. Otherwise, you won't get the private sector to invest. And when you're throwing in a beauty pageant kind of bid, and then it comes down to random allocations, in effect, you cannot plan strategically. So it's good that there's investment in R&D goes into Cambridge and the Golden Triangle. It should also.
It's funny. Well, it's funny you mentioned Cambridge. I mean, first of all, just broadly, it just doesn't live up to the scale of perhaps the ambition that was imagined by people like Jamie. Would you agree with that? That this begging bowl, as I think the West Midlands Conservative Mayor Andy Street has said, there should be an end to this begging bowl culture for money.
Well, it's grants. I mean, always places apply for grants, and I mean, I agree with you that we clearly need to do more. I mean, levelling up is a big generational project. I mean, it was never going to happen overnight, and in fact, indeed, if you go back to the last Labour government, they were very keen on didn't use the term levelling up, but it was the same sort of concept of trying to help the north. And you know, it is a long-term project. The most important thing is the government remains committed to it, and you know, I'm sure you'll get a lot of other projects coming forwards, other schemes, ideas and policies coming forward to make sure we do level up as a country.
But Jamie mentioned Cambridge. Your constituency is in Cambridgeshire. I mean, this isn't left-leaning think tank IPPR. This is The Spectator saying the Oxford-Cambridge ARC, which is up for extra investment from the government, shows why the Tories don't get it. You don't get it. according to The Spectator.
Well, I mean, I did read that article. Is it by a young guy who's frustrated about being excluded from the housing market, and I totally get that. You know, home ownership rates do need to go up. I think they were arguing in that article that actually they should invest far more in the Oxcammark, but it's difficult to reconcile that with the levelling up, because obviously one of the concerns is that you invest more in the southeast, the Golden Triangle of London, Cambridge, and Oxford, and Cambridge is boomtown. I mean, it's got so much investment, doesn't know what to do with it, and actually, so you know, the government and what Michael Gove has been trying to do as the levelling up secretary is balance out that sort of growth in the south with growth in the north.
Well, I'm going to come to the rest of you, I promise a minute. But Jamie, you wanted to say something in response.
Yeah, well, it's interesting. We're talking about the think tanks there. So the policy exchange, I think Anthony was involved in. Onward, again, these are Tory think tanks. They all agree, to work with them, that we need fiscal devolution in this country if we're ever going to unleash the North. Because when decision-making occurs in London, in Whitehall, in South West 1, we are always forgotten about. And we've shown it. The track record is there. The evidence is there of what we've achieved in the last few years when we get the budgets. 50% increase in value for money and skills training once that budget was devolved to us. So that's what we really need. It's the quantum of money, but crucially, it's the ability to tie it together, because no one in Whitehall knows the Chamber of Commerce chair, the local enterprise partnership there, all the university heads, the local businesses, the charity sector in our region, but I do. So we're able to operate on a strategic, systemic basis rather than ad hoc, short-term funding arrangements.
Sarah?
Well, hard to disagree with everything that Jamie said there. I think there's no doubt that with the Levelling Up funding awards that we saw last week, it is, and again, as Andy Streeter said, the begging bowl culture. What we really need is some joined up strategic thinking about what it's going to take to boost investment, private sector investment, public sector investment in those parts of the country where there are, you know, there's opportunities for growth. So let's look at it that way. And I think it is really important that we're looking at, you know, what is it? Is it transport infrastructure? Is it investment in research and development? But until the government's actually got a real proper strategic plan, as opposed to just these little tiny parcels of money here and there to the lucky, you know, the lucky towns and cities. And I mean, I think it's been a bit of a waste of time.
Oh, you think it's been a total waste of time?
A bit of a waste of time.
Sorry.
What I mean is, you've had all of these local authorities. They've been working on their bids, and it's been taking them away from other work they could have been doing. But again, just to emphasise what Jamie was saying there, we've seen local authorities all across the country have had their budgets slashed, and now a few of them are getting tiny bits and pieces back. It's no way to have a proper strategic approach to improving growth and productivity.
Fiscal devolution, Arlene?
Well, I see a different way of doing it, actually, and it's taking Jamie's point about local communities knowing on the ground what's important for them and what needs to be done. So you have, as we did in Belfast, and indeed up in the northwest as well, have where they had city deals, and they worked with Westminster, they worked with Stormont, and they were able to get a pot of money which they could then deliver on the ground. I see that should be the way for this to happen as well. So we have plans for the southwest of Northern Ireland, for example, and then that is the plan that government should then fund. So you're working together between local government, between the devolved administrations and Westminster. You're having that togetherness, as it were, rather than Westminster decide, no, I like the look of that, I'll give some money to that, which doesn't really work.
What does it really mean, fiscal devolution, Jonathan, in real terms?
Well, I mean, first of all, you can't get away from the context here, which is there's been a decade of starving many of these local and regional authorities of funds from austerity at the beginning and huge budget cuts since. So Jamie Driscoll and people like him have been dealing with shrinking budgets for over a decade. But beyond that, yeah, I think giving the levers of decision-making to the people on the ground. Our model in this country is broken. It's far too centralised, in which Westminster dispenses largesse to the lucky few, as we've been hearing. Instead, the decision-making, actually, I would have local and regional authorities have the ability to raise funds for themselves as well as to spend it, to borrow, to invest, to have the kind of financial muscle that can enable them not to enter essentially a lottery or a beauty pageant and hope that they get lucky. Morecambe have got lucky with the Eden Project. On another day, you lose out. Instead, they should should be in charge of their own fiscal
But
affairs.
that's never popular with local politicians, but they then have to take the decision
well, that's
to ask their ratepayers for more money,
Yeah.
and that never goes down well.
But
with
that's
local
what I mean
politicians.
about whether you'd be in favour of it, because yes, it's ideal in theory,
Yeah.
but no one wants that.
We do have one of the most centralised tax
Jamie.
systems.
I think Jamie wants that
Yes.
now.
Any advanced country in the world, and I used to work for the former mayor of London, and I kept arguing for more devolution. Even in a big metropolis like London, the mayor has virtually no control over taxation.
Whatever happened to him?
Except on council tax.
We'll let that hang in the air. Jamie, you wanted to come in on that. And also, just as you're talking, Jamie, I know you can't see it, but I'm going to read you this headline. BBC News, spirit of Thatcherism will help north of England, says Gove, Michael Gove, the Levelling Up Secretary. Will that help?
Well, I heard Michael say that yesterday at the Convention of the North. It didn't go down well in the North. It really... Let's park that one, shall we?
All right.
So fiscal devolution is not about raising more taxes from the people in the North. Our business rates, for example, based in the North East is £300 per capita. In London, it's £940 per capita. So I'd have to raise taxes 3 times higher. What I want is powers like land value capture, or I've created 14 years worth of jobs, according to the target government gave me in 3 years. So can I have the payroll taxes that we created from that back? Can we have a regional wealth fund? That is, in fact, written into our new devolution deal. So one of the things we're already doing is we've created an investment fund vehicle. We're levering in money from pension funds. There's £3.4 trillion in pension funds looking to invest somewhere, all not making enough money from government bonds at the moment. And what we want is the support from government to be able to lever that huge amount of money in, which is our pensions. We want it to grow. So that's, I think, where innovation needs to come.
All right.
And that will only happen by talking to local leaders like me.
Jamie Driscoll, thank you very much. I'm sure you're making all these presentations to government ministers. Thank you for joining us today.